Hello everyone and welcome back. It's been a little while, aka I took a month break and then watched the Lizzie McGuire movie and then cut my hair to become Lizzie McGuire, of course. Obviously I was blonde before, but bangs were the right decision because I saw Lizzie McGuire on my screen and said I need that. So you could say I'm Lizzie McGuire, you could also say I'm Hannah Montana, but as my sister would describe it, I'm now Jace Norman in his bowl cut era. I kind of took offense to that one only for the fact that she compared me to a little boy. It has now come to my advantage with the making of this video. Today we'll be talking about the Jace Norman cinematic universe, aka the things that are important to me that Jace Norman started. Jace Norman's prime, you could say, was the era when he just started doing Henry Danger because he was in everything, aka one Disney show and a bunch of Nick stuff. That's what we'll be talking about today. Also, if you hear noise from this cardboard box that's currently propping up my TV, no you don't. It's annoying to me, but I'm hoping the microphone can't pick it up. I'll first be talking about his small roles in like one episode of a TV show. So I apologize for how bright this screen is. Hopefully it'll just get better. And if you are unfamiliar with the plot of Jessie, it's about a nanny being hired for a really rich family and she's an aspiring actor in New York. This is obviously the first season, so we are like pretty familiar with the characters, and obviously I watched the show religiously as a kid, so I know everything about them. So if I'm saying something, just I probably won't give clarification, only for the fact that I know exactly what's going on. In this episode, Debbie Ryan is in her bang era. Robbie is going to school with Luke for the first time at like a public middle school. They're in 5th grade, and here we are introduced to Jace Norman. He is friends with Luke, and now introducing him, let me get into character. I'm starting to see what my sister was talking about. Are we not literally twins right now? His name is Finch, and I will not be calling him Finch because I think that's quite frankly a stupid name, so his name is Jace. Anyway, he comes to tell Luke that the bully in the school, Dale Davenport, who I assume is related to the Davenports in Lab Rats because you can't just have that last name and not be related. Anyway, he is now back from, I assume, juvie because he allegedly attacked a lunch lady and she wouldn't testify. So he is now out of juvie and ready to wreak havoc on the school yet again. Or he killed someone else and the legislator wasn't testify against him. I choose to think he's a murderer. Also, I will only be explaining the plot that Jason Norman's character is in because why would I be talking about the whole episode that has nothing to do with him? This video is all about him. Obviously, now that Robbie is at the school, Jace sees him and then calls him weird in front of Luke, and then Luke denies that he knows him at all, even though they are literally brothers. And this is because Robbie wants to play cricket in the park, and Jace is trying to play some different game. I think it's baseball or something like that. But as Robbie is trying to play cricket, he floods the entire park, meaning that Jace and his friends have to leave, and he gets really mad about that. After this, Robbie wants to fit in. Robbie asks Jessie for advice, and then Jessie gives him the advice to act like someone he admires. Because of this, Robbie takes it upon himself to dress as Luke going to school the next day, and Luke does not like this at all, and then says that they're no longer brothers. And while in this kind of like confident Luke persona, Robbie talks to Dale Davenport and then offends him. I forget what he says, but that's not important. And because of this, he starts attacking all of the younger boys. And so Jace gives him bologna for lunch. And I specifically remember this scene in my head from watching it when I was a child.
Is this processed?
No, I think it's bologna. Please don't hurt me.
Because of this encounter, the bully also kind of has it out for Robbie. And so he's hiding later in that day. And then Jessie comes to the school and convinces Luke to protect Robbie instead of acting like they're not brothers. And then I assume the next day at lunch, Luke ends up standing up for Robbie in front of the bully instead of ignoring it. And then Robbie plans to have the bully eat Indian dragonfire peppers, which he just has throughout the episode, and puts them inside his sandwich, so he will have to eat them. And he can't handle like how spicy they are, and so he like runs out screaming. And this is really embarrassing for him, so he stops harassing them entirely. And then because of this, Robbie seems as like kind of cool because he like took down the bully. And so Luke offers to like have him be a part of him and Jace's friend group, and then he says no because he's friends with the Reptile Club. So go him. I rate this 6 bolognas out of 10 dragonfire peppers. If you are not aware, The Thundermans is a show about a superhero family having to blend in with normal society because they can't have their secret identities known. And the family is made up of many different people, but important to the plot today is basically the main characters, Phoebe Thunderman and her twin brother, Max Thunderman, and then their father, whose name is Hank, and their little brother, Billy. There is other people, but they're not important to the plot. Phoebe is planning to run for freshman class president and enlists her brother Max to help her, even though he's very much against this. She is very like by the book and wants to win people over by like giving them useful things, and then after she gives her like very structured speeches very long, Max gives an impromptu speech which makes all the people like him better, and so now he's running for president instead and wins. And Phoebe is elected vice president because I think she was the only other person running, and her ideas keep getting dismissed because Max is busy having fun and having the power of being president. And because of this, he hires a bodyguard who is Jace Norman, and his name is Flunky. In honor of Flunky, I will keep these on for the rest of this episode. And my question is, if Max is freshman president, aka he is a freshman in high school, then what is Flunky? Because he is like a little boy. So why is he in high school if he is supposedly a middle schooler? Maybe it's like a mixed thing, but they never said that. So is he a freshman in high school that's just like really small or like really young? I don't know. and they never explain it. Also, every time that Flunky is with Max, he flirts with Phoebe and then Phoebe shuts him down. So that's two universes where Jace Norman flirts with Phoebe Thunderman. Anyway, eventually, Max ends up stealing one of Phoebe's plans, and so she wants to basically prank him for doing so and sabotage his like next speech or whatever. She does this with a Russian plant that she found in like some magazine that makes you shit. And she puts it like on top of pizza and then offers it to Max, but she eventually feels bad and tries to take the pizza back, but Flunky eats it instead. And so then as he's running to the bathroom, he accidentally pushes Max down a slide that they have going down to their basement because Max has an evil lair because he has an evil streak in the show. And in the B plot, Hank and Billy are trying to bond over like father-son things, and they get really into rock collecting, and then eventually they get in trouble for how many rocks they collect, and so they have to hide them in Max's lair. And then when Max gets pushed down his slide, he falls onto all of the rocks and so breaks like every bone in his body. And then Phoebe feels really bad about this because it was technically her prank that landed him breaking every bone of his body, but she does take Max's place of unveiling a new smoothie machine for the school. Eventually, Max figures out about that it was all based on Phoebe's prank, and so he has Flunky help him by pushing him in a wheelchair to help sabotage Phoebe's unveiling of the new smoothie machine. But before he can do this, Phoebe gives a speech about how Max deserves to be unveiling it because he has better ideas for the class, even though she really wanted to be president. And because of this, Max feels bad that he was going to like sabotage her thing, and so he stops her from getting hit, and the principal gets hit with smoothie instead. I rate this episode 8 flunkies out of 10 Russian plants. If you don't know, The Loud House is a Nickelodeon show that follows Lincoln Loud in his life with a bunch of sisters, which is not important to this episode at all. In this episode, Lincoln and his dad bond over this TV show that's kind of like Temple Run, and then because they're so obsessed with it, they like send an application to be on the show, and they get accepted, but they have to compete against another father and son duo. So their team is this really like macho father and son duo that's like obsessed with winning, and the son is voiced by Jace Norman and the father is voiced by Cooper Barnes, aka Captain Man from Henry Danger. But was that not publicized the same amount? Because I heard about Jace Norman voicing this kid. Never once did I hear that Cooper Barnes was voicing this man. I only learned it from his Facebook account. Anyway, Jace Norman probably only speaks about 3 times in this episode, saying something along the lines of, yeah, bro, or man. Also, his name is Steak, so there's that. Lincoln and his dad are in a team based on iguanas, and then Steak and his dad are on a team based on snakes. Steak and his dad are making fun of Lincoln and his dad because they're like kind of bad at the challenges or whatever, and so this leads to a really bad environment because Lincoln and his dad get really competitive and mad at each other for not doing well, and really they just want to come have fun and like have something to bond over, but eventually they settle their differences, and so they do the last challenge and still lose, but they're happy about it. But before they come to this conclusion, they make a bet that whoever loses has to walk through the airport in their underwear. Since Lincoln and his dad lost, they have to walk through the airport in their underwear, but they don't care because they're just happy to be doing something together. And then as they're walking through the airport, everyone claps because they're like, oh my god, like father-son duo, like you guys have such a good bond, you know? Public indecency is a crime. I don't know about this episode because I have daddy issues, so I can't relate to a good father and child relationship. Therefore, I rate this 4 iguanas out of 10 snakes. And next up are the Nickelodeon specials that Jace Norman starred in. This board's pretty sparse because Jace Norman has about a 5-minute bit inside the special. We open with Jace Norman saying that his name is Cooper and he'll be Josie with Scooper, aka he works at an ice cream shop. I do not know the context of where this ice cream shop is, circa to anything. I think it's a story inside the special. I didn't watch the whole thing, so how should I know? She wants a sample of a certain ice cream, but it's like frozen throughout the whole top, so Cooper's trying very elaborate ways of scooping said ice cream. One of these ways is him chucking it out the window and then it gets ran over by a car. And I was watching this with my sister, and so when that happened, she found it funny and laughed, which means that it's actually funny. Also, I do not like his hair in the special. You can't see it in this picture, but just know that it's not good. And then finally, after like blowtorching the frozen ice cream and doing a bunch of stuff, he finally gets a sample of the ice cream, and then Jojo Siwa says that she doesn't have taste buds, so anything would have tasted the same anyway. And then Cooper crushes out respectively. I rate this 9 Coopers out of 10 Scoopers. This is also about a 5-minute bit inside of the special. I also did not watch the rest of this, except for I skimmed this one a little bit more because I thought he was going to be in it more. He was not. This has nothing to do with the actual plot of the special, and it's just a story. Jace Norman, whose name is Dilbert Palermo or something like that. His last name is said really weird. I don't know. He is running a game show called Guess That Gift. The 2 contestants on the game show are Babe from Game Shakers and Triple G from Game Shakers, but they have actual names because they're not said characters. The essence of the game is that a gift that's wrapped, and they have to guess what's wrapped inside, and if they guess correctly, then they get the gift that's inside. Babe gets every single one of them right because they're like really easy. Trip's ones seem easy, but then are rolled up socks every single time. Like it'll be a clear outline of a guitar, and then it'll be like a bunch of rolled socks that look like a guitar, you know? So he gets them wrong every single time. And because of this, he's just now guessing rolled up socks every single time. And the last one he has is a very obvious outline of a car. And so he says roll up socks, but it actually is a car this time. And so he loses out on a car. And it's also filled with $1 million. Also, Charlotte from Henry Danger, aka Riel Downs, is like the lady from Wheel of Fortune who's like showing the things. She is that, and she's dressed as an elf because Christmas special. And at the very end of the special, they have all the people from the different bits all singing around, rocking around the Christmas tree. And so Jace Norman is there doing that. I rate this 7 cars out of 10 socks. This is objectively probably what Jace Norman is most known for, is his role in Henry Danger, and I made a whole 3.5 hour video on the entire plot of it, so go check that out. So go watch the video and come back, or watch it after this. Moral of the story, just watch it. Okay, this was a animated show that was based off of Henry Danger, that was created in universe of Henry Danger, and then made into an actual show outside of it. But I didn't really watch this as a kid, and so I rewatched 2 episodes based off what my sister remembered watching. And the first thing I have to say about this show is that the intro is god awful, aka the song. It's really bad and I don't want to hear it ever again. Because it's like an animated comedy show, they're split into like A and B episodes. The ones I watched were episode 9A and episode 10B. Also, this kind of relies on the lore of Henry Danger, so if you didn't go watch my Henry Danger video, still go do so now because this will make more sense if you know everything. In episode 9A, Mad Wax, Kid Danger and Captain Man are in the Mancopter, and then they almost crash into Harrison Ford, who's in a ship with off-brand Chewbacca, which Harrison Ford does exist and flies planes in the Henry Danger universe, so this isn't out of the question. Trust me and my sister, obsessed with Star Wars, so we were flabbergasted when we saw Harrison Ford on our screens in the first, 5 seconds of the show. And a bit throughout this episode, I do believe, is that Henry has a really funny scream when this happens. I don't know, I thought it was really funny when I watched it. Anyway, they go to a celebrity wax museum because they have wax figures that are being presented of Captain Man and Kid Danger. This girl over here, whose name is Quinn, makes the wax figures evil with some controlling dart, and she is voiced by Babe from Game Shakers. Kid Danger figures out that the wax figures will burn if they're in the sun, similar to the Gravity Falls episode where they burn all the wax figures when they turn evil.
And wax shall rise again.
You know any limericks?
There once was a dude from Kentucky.
Nope.
They also figure out that this girl is behind the evil stuff, and so they trap her under a tree trunk and then jump rope on top of said tree trunk, literally crushing her ribs. And her motivation for doing all this was because Captain Man and Kid Danger didn't go to her birthday party. In episode 10B, Sticky Vicky, they go to a celebrity trash museum as their normal selves, aka Henry is there on a field trip. While at the museum, they see Ariana Grande's wig from Victorious, because we are inside the Nickelodeon universe. And the wig gets stolen by a villain named Sticky Vicky, who canonically exists in this universe and has never been mentioned before in Henry Danger, because why would they make this real? Because her whole shtick is that she has really sticky spit and steal stuff with it, I guess. And then they're trying to stop her from stealing stuff in the museum. And so as Captain Man and Kid Danger, they end up getting stuck together. And so they have to fight with swords back to back because they're stuck to each other. And they fight with One Direction swords.
I'll use this sword that was thrown in the garbage by the band One Direction.
And I'll also use one of their garbage swords. Aha!
I rate this overall show based on the 2 episodes I watched a 7 Ariana Grande wigs out of 10 Harrison Fords. And now we're going to talk about the movies that Jace Norman starred in. I regret listening to my sister that dressing up for each thing would be a good idea. It's 1,000 degrees in here and I've had to change 17 times. Anyway, Splitting Atom was a Nickelodeon original movie, which, in my opinion, never should have happened. I also watched this with my sister and neither of us enjoyed it, so you're in for a wild ride. Let's just say that. Jace, whose name is Adam, is stressed because he has too many things to do in his life. AKA, he's trying to make money by mowing people's lawns, and he has a new job at the water park, and so he is just busy all the time and never has time to do anything fun. And at his new job at the water park, he is working with his crush, who is a lifeguard, and her name is Lori. Also working at the water park is Jack Griffo, whose name eludes me, so he is Jack Griffo. And he is also a lifeguard, but he is very, jock-esque and very cocky and does not like Jace Norman because he's a little boy, I guess. And then his uncle, who is the guy from School of Rock, comes to visit him because his parents are leaving for a few days. And then he's hanging out with his 2 friends, and they're hanging out in this huge treehouse because his parents are gone and they're just partying it up in this treehouse. This treehouse is sick, and I want to be in it. And then I think they agreed to play hide and seek with his little sister, who I did not put up here, and they're looking for her in the basement. And then they end up finding this tanning bed looking thing. Adam falls into it and then gets shocked with a lot of watts of electricity. And then when he gets back to his room, passes out and dies. Just kidding. That would be a very short movie. But it actually turns out that he cloned himself, aka he wakes up the next day to an identical copy of him. And Adam number 2 is giving very much British vibes, if that makes sense. He's very prim and proper, aka he's wearing a collared shirt and tie. And my sister said that he is giving Joe Alwyn vibes. So just think about that. And as he's dealing with this, he is kind of, freaking out about the fact that he cloned himself. And the guy that he mows lawns for is also threatening to fire him if he doesn't mow his lawn today. But he also has a meeting at the water park, which is like integral to his job because it's like a meeting for all staff. And so he leaves his clone to watch over the house and also to mow the lawn across the street. But Adam number 2 ends up making another clone to mow the lawn for him, who is what I call Caveman Adam, aka don't make a clone of a clone. It won't go well. And I'm pretty sure they nickname him Winston. And while this is happening, Adam doesn't know yet. He's still at the meeting for the water park, and he accidentally signs up for a fundraiser committee that he did not want to be on, but Lori is also on the committee, so there's that. And then Jack Griffo outs him for being a perv, aka I think he was trying to watch Lori while she was doing something, and so then Jack Griffo said that he was like stalking her and called him out for being a perv, which honestly was kind of deserved. And because he's now in close proximity to, talking to Lori now, because they're on the same fundraiser committee, Adam and his friends, because he tells his friends about the clone, decide to make more Adams inside of the tanning bed to make him cooler and to get more money. And they end up keeping them all in the treehouse because it's huge and they can just house a bunch of Adams there. From this, they make what I nicknamed Party Adam, aka he loves partying. That's his only thing. And Shakespearean Adam, he just likes to write poetry / use fancy words. So that's what my outfit is based on: a little sweater vest and then parted bangs. And yes, he does have a ponytail. He has a rat tail on the back of his head. It's disgusting. It's gross. And also, Party Adam, as he's running around most of the time, has a lampshade over his head, and you can tell that it's obviously not Jace Norman underneath said lampshade, and it's a grown-ass man doing stunts.
Bring it, Vance! Can't hide from me!
It's obvious every single time, and it makes me laugh. And they end up splitting up the clones to do like 4 separate jobs at once, which is going to the mall, which was where Party Adam goes for some reason. Adam number 2 is watching Adam's little sister. Normal Adam goes to a magic show with his uncle because his uncle is an amateur magician, and that's what he's doing while he's watching the kids or whatever. And I think Shakespearean Adam goes to the water park to go talk to Lori or something like that. Adam number 2 figures out like a budget solution for the water park, and so his manager really likes him because he thinks like he's really smart. Party Adam surprisingly charms Lori because she thinks he's fun. But this does not last long because as he's like having fun or whatever in the mall, he also smashes a cake in her face, which makes her mad. And then to remedy this, they send Shakespearean Adam to do a apology to her by an aquatic interpretive dance, and this somehow works. I'm not going to question it. Maybe they're made for each other because I would not have accepted that. And then they also plot to get Jack Griffo out of the equation because I think he's like sort of has 40 vibes with Lori. I don't know, but they lure him into a dumpster, and then they're like luring him over a fence, and he becomes Spider-Man for a moment. This is so he is distracted and Shakespearean Adam can read a poem to Lori, which she is actually really touched by. But he also gives her a really gross sandwich that literally gives her food poisoning. So that also didn't last long. And then normal Adam has an epiphany that he shouldn't be lying to the girl that he likes because he never gets to spend time with her because all of his clones are spending time with her. He decides that he should probably just, be himself. But the problem is that as all of his clones are inside the house, Lori comes to his house to go like return his journal or something, which is Shakespearean Adam's full of poetry. As she returns it, she says that she read it, which is crazy. And then as they're talking, Jack Griffo pulls up in his convertible and then picks Lori up. And so Adam gets jealous. And then because of this, he decides to make another clone, which is like the perfect version of him as competition against Jack Griffo to win the girl, basically. And this is what I like to call perfect Adam. And the thing about perfect Adam is that he's strong, confident, everything that normal Adam really isn't. AKA he's a really like poor swimmer. Perfect Adam is a perfect swimmer. And so he becomes the new top lifeguard by saving someone's life at the water park. He takes over Jack Griffo's spot as the top lifeguard, and so Jack Griffo gets really sad. And because of this, he crashes out and then leaves the water park. I think he was Lori's ride, and so then Adam gives Lori a ride home on his dog scooter. Him and Lori plan to meet for the fundraising details because the water park is about to go under. They need money fast. He basically makes it a date by going to a really fancy restaurant, and that was not the vibe she was going for, and so she's like kind of nervy because that's not what she wanted. But he's also really nervous because he wants the date to go well. Perfect Adam is watching over the date, and then he's really mad about how Adam is handling it, and so he like really wants to be there himself. Adam decides to not have like the whole pressure of a perfect date or whatever, and so they go to the water park instead and play like the arcade games that are there. And then he like confesses that he's like not the perfect guy or whatever, and she's like, no, that's fine because you're like charming with your mistakes or whatever. I personally do not believe that, but to each their own. And so they end up having a lot of fun at the water park, and it's like a really good date. But perfect Adam is still mad that it's not the date that he would have done, aka he's getting consciousness like AI. If you think about it, perfect Adam is basically the mimic. Any FNAF heads out there would get that one. And then for a long time in the movie, they just divide and conquer all of Adam's jobs and clone shenanigans, And then eventually they realize that they feel pain as one entity, aka one clone gets hurt, every clone gets hurt. Perfect Adam makes a plan to traumatize Jack Griffo for life, aka chases him around the water park, all clones. So he sees all of the clones except for normal Adam because I think he's out with Lori. And he gets like actually traumatized and runs away screaming because that's terrifying. he sees this visual, I would crash out as well. At least he's eating down when he's crashing out, though. The problem is that Jack Griffo and I think his band are supposed to perform for the fundraiser. When he crashes out and leaves, he doesn't want to perform for the fundraiser that night, obviously. His manager goes to Perfect Adam and says that he will lose his job if he can't find a new fundraising act. And Perfect Adam does not care about this at all because he just wants to date Lori. That's all he wants to do. But Adam is stressing because, you know, that's his job. At this time, normal Adam has a spreading rash that's on his arm, and it is bad, but he's just ignoring it. And he goes to the water park to meet Lori about the fundraising thing. And he decides to switch the headlining act with his uncle because his uncle has been trying to do headlining stuff for his magic. And so his stage name is Magic Mitch. Adam and Lori go to Adam's house together, and then she finds out about all the clones because she's seen them all. And she's like kind of freaking out, reasonably so, because like she realizes that he's been lying to her this entire time. But I wouldn't say freaking out enough about the fact that they're clones. I would be running away, but she's just like yelling at him. And basically all the clones are in like a huge disarray because Perfect Adam rebelled because he wants to take control of Adam's life. And when Lori is yelling at him, she also starts crying because she's like, oh, like this whole like relationship has been a lie, but like they're not even dating. And then he explains that he only did it because he wasn't confident in himself. And then she's chill with that, I guess. And then eventually they find a YouTube video that the cloning machine that they used is like actually a cloning machine. It's not just a tanning bed. It's like really dangerous, and Adam will die if he keeps using it. And unless he puts all the clones back into the machine, aka like gets rid of them all, then he will die with the spreading rash that's on his body. Anyway, he needs a special thing that's inside of the tanning bed, like to put the clones back in there. Perfect Adam destroyed the tanning bed in an effort to, you know, stay alive forever. And they figure this out because his uncle comes home and then says the machine is destroyed and is completely chill with the fact that there's clones in his house. I would also be freaking out. Like, why is no one having a normal reaction to this? Except for Jack Griffo, of course. His friends go to fix the machine. They decide to fix the machine and transport it to the water park in order for all of the clones to go through it to basically make them disappear. And this is because the fundraiser is going on like while this is happening. And so Adam goes with his uncle to help him do the act, which is clone shenanigans, of course. AKA he's pretending to multiply Adam having different clones. Isn't that special? And then he makes them all disappear by like moving them off stage. I'm pretty sure it's fake magic. At least I think so. And then after the show, it goes really well. People really love Magic Mitch or whatever. Perfect Adam, now evil Adam, intercepts Lori because Lori thinks it's normal Adam. And normal Adam figured this out because they can't find Lori. And so he has his little sister kick him in the balls. And so they all feel that pain. And so evil Adam falls down. Evil Adam also has the special crystal they need for the tanning bed or whatever. And so Lori steals that and then runs away. Jack Griffo stops normal Adam from going to help Lori because as she runs away, evil Adam chases her and then like she's hanging off of the side of a water slide and about like to fall to her death. He's trying to get past Jack Griffo because like he's gonna go save Lori's life. But Jack Griffo's like yelling at him or whatever for having clones, I guess. And then he realizes that Lori's about to fall to her death. And so he like runs away and lets Adam help her. I think Lori survives by going down the water slide that she was like hanging next to. And so she helps his friends move the cloning machine to be at the bottom of the water slide. So if they fall through the water slide, then the clones will just disappear because it's like sitting on top of it. And then evil Adam and normal Adam have a sinners-esque fight, aka a clone fight.
You're holding me back. I don't want to fight you. Good. Just give up.
And then he pushes evil Adam down the slide and into the cloning machine. And then all the other Adams show up because normal Adam was about to fall into the machine as well. Because I assume he also would die if he fell in. Unexplained, I guess he would. And then they all agree to sacrifice their own lives to help the betterment of normal Adam because they can't all be clones. And so they all give their goodbyes, which lasts so long. He gives a goodbye to every single Adam, which is completely unnecessary because most of them are forgettable. I guess no one saw this spectacle because if I saw a bunch of clones fighting on top of a water slide, I would be freaked out. As they're leaving, him and Lori have a heart-to-heart about how she likes the normal Adam and they kiss. And then the next morning he wakes up and then thinks that everything happened was a dream, and so he like crashes out because he's like, oh my god, like that I didn't get the girl in my dreams or whatever. And then he sees a piece of pizza that was on the ceiling before, and he's like, oh my god, it wasn't a dream because that piece of pizza was because of one of the Adams. And his parents come home after like a week, I guess, I don't know. As his uncle's leaving since their parents are back, he gives him the crystal from the tanning bed. And then him and Lori go to have a date together for like the day. She gives an exposition dump that Jack Griffo is actually chill with Adam now because I guess the cloning business really changed his perspective on life. His little sister has a clone at the end, and then his parents see the clone and like freak out. This is actually like a nothing burger movie, and I hated every second of it. It was an hour and a half, but it felt like 3 hours, and it shouldn't have been an hour and a half. This would have done great as a 45-minute movie. So because of this, I rate it 3 clones out of 10 Jack Griffos. It's currently 1 a.m. and I still have 4 movies to do. The first movie that I watched for this video was Rufus. which may have some bias to me, but I liked this movie, so let's get into it. We start off with some British guy, aka this guy. I do not know his name, nor do I care. He has a spy team. They're hunting down a guy with a magical amulet, and then they finally catch him, and he drops the amulet in a sewer so then they can't get it. And we watch as the amulet travels down a random creek and stops in a park on like a branch. We'll come back to that later. And we meet our main character, Manny, who has just moved from a new town and he has like no friends because he's joining a new school. He is stressing out and his only friend is his dog, Rufus. Rufus is a very sweet dog because he's a golden lab. Finally, Manny goes to school and then meets this girl who's interviewing people for like the school paper or whatever, and her name is Paige. And then she interviews him about being like the new kid or whatever, and he doesn't know what to say because he's like awkward. And then as he walks into the building, a bunch of blue paint gets dumped on him because it's like the school color and they're repainting it, and then he like knocks into the ladder and gets blue paint all over him. So he's really embarrassed because that was his first impression in the school. And then he complains about this to his parents when he gets home, and he's like, oh yeah, like I can never go back to school again. Like that was really embarrassing. And they do not care at all. And so he takes Rufus to the park instead. And Rufus ends up finding the magical amulet that ended up landing in this park. He just is holding it in his mouth or whatever. And so Manny's like, oh, fun. And so he puts it on his neck. They go back home and Rufus continues to wear it. And he has like a fire-ass dog bed in Manny's room. And it's like really big and looks really comfy. And then as he's going to bed, Manny wishes that he could have friends at school. And as he makes that wish, Rufus goes to bed in his room and then turns into a real boy who is Jace Norman because of the magical amulet. And then Manny wakes up to this frame the next morning. And they figure out that Rufus can only be a real boy, aka Jace Norman, with the amulet on. And then chaos ensues as Rufus has to act like a normal boy even though he is a dog, and so he's doing dog activities as a teenage boy. For example, on their walk to school, he takes a shit in a bush. Surprisingly enough, he is allowed at school with Manny even though he has no paperwork. I'm calling that movie magic right there because he does not have a social security number. How is he allowed in school? Anyway, people really like him because he's funny because he acts like a dog. I guess that's a cool thing. I thought people didn't like furries, but maybe I'm wrong. He becomes really popular because people just think he's funny, probably because they're middle schoolers. I don't know. And then basically they know Manny because of Rufus, but they forget about Rufus just because the cover story is that he's Rufus's cousin, and so everyone just thinks of him as Rufus's cousin and not his own person. And there's a montage of Rufus doing dog-like things at school, like eating without utensils and just with his mouth, and also being really good at catching balls in like soccer or whatever. And this montage is to the song "Don't Stop" by Five Sauce, which is a crazy song pick because like why is it here? And they also use like 2 minutes of the whole song. Like they use full chorus, bridge, and chorus again. That's an insane amount. Usually it's just like a chorus. And then Paige is taking notes about Rufus because she notices his weird behavior, because who else wouldn't notice his furry ass behavior? Rufus is chasing a squirrel in his human form, of course, and he chases him into the road and almost gets ran over by the evil British guy. And the evil British guy notices that he has the amulet on, and so he's like trying to chase after him. Manny really wants to ask Paige to the dance because I guess they had flirty vibes. I didn't really get that, but like Manny likes her, so that's what matters. And Rufus is trying to help him do it, and he's kind of being pushy about it, and so Manny gets mad at him. Manny sees Rufus asking Paige to the dance, and so he gets really mad because he's like, oh my god, like he literally stole my girl, and that's my dog, you know? And he's also mad at him because Rufus becomes really popular and doesn't really hang out with Manny anymore, but it's all a huge misunderstanding because it turns out that Rufus is just trying to make Manny friends, and so he's talking to other people about Manny. He's basically talking at Manny all the freaking time, and Manny just doesn't hear any of it. He only hears the bad stuff, so he's mad at Rufus. The dance that they have going on is like, I think it's like a homecoming dance-esque thing, but like for middle schoolers, and it's canine themed because they voted on the theme, and I'm pretty sure Rufus said canine because, you know, he's a canine, but people don't know that, and they agreed. And also, Paige does a interview with Rufus, and I'm pretty sure this is where he like asks her to the dance or whatever. And they go to the dance, and then Rufus is wearing suspenders. Who dressed him? Since the dance is canine themed, they play a song which has like barking in it, so, similar to Who Let the Dogs Out, but more all barking and less lyrics. And then Rufus does a fuck ass dance. Very much giving Larry Larry Vampire when he does a fuck ass dance at the homecoming dance.
And they create a little dance circle, and he does this fuck ass dance that's really stupid.
Stop it, Nickelodeon. This is not okay. I hate watching them every single time. And then Manny ends up pulling Rufus to the side after his little dance or whatever, and then yelling at him for how he like ruined his life and literally made it worse, and he wishes that he never came to school with him or whatever. And this makes Rufus so upset that he literally runs away. I know that he's in human form, but like, don't yell at your dog. That's actually so rude. And then Paige comes up to Manny and reveals that she knows everything about Rufus because when she interviewed him for like the paper or whatever, he basically just told her everything. He was like, yeah, I'm literally a dog. And then she also reveals that Rufus didn't ask her out to the dance. He asked her out for Manny. And so Manny's like, oh, so you like actually did want to go to dance with me? And she's like, yeah, which is cute, I guess. Manny wins like best of the dance, which is like homecoming king, because Rufus was talking him up so much that everyone voted for him. Like, isn't that so sweet? But Rufus doesn't even get to see it because he ran away and he's so sad. And Manny feels really bad because he's like, oh my god, like I misread this completely. Rufus is like my best friend ever. And so he goes to try and find him. Rufus is also trying to look for him because he realizes that Manny's looking for him. And he sees Manny getting kidnapped by the evil spy people, which is crazy. Him and Paige go to chase after Manny by like following the truck that he's going in. And then when they kidnap him, they like put tape over his mouth and say children should be seen and not heard, which is so wicked of them. Animals should be seen and not heard. Anyway, the kidnapping was a trap because they just wanted Rufus there to get the amulet. And so they get there and realize that. And so Paige plans to dump a bunch of dog food on the evil people until they can escape. And at the same time, Manny's parents realize that Rufus has been missing for like days on end because they haven't seen the dog anywhere because he's been in human form. And so they are tracking his microchip, and then they're also going to the warehouse. Manny has a heart-to-heart with Rufus inside the warehouse when they could be escaping. I do not get why they have a heart-to-heart right here, right now. But basically the British guy is like walking through the warehouse trying to look for them, and he's like avidly chasing them, and then they're like literally they're like, oh my god, like we're best friends or whatever. Like, I'm sorry that I misunderstood that. Evil British guy shoots Rufus with a dart, which actually hits the amulet instead of his body, thank God, because he's still alive, but he's just stuck at his dog now because the amulet is broken. And then this is right when Manny's parents show up, and so they see the dog, and they're like, oh yay, like he's not dead or whatever. He's fine, even though he was lost. And then they also see that Manny was literally in some random warehouse with some evil people, and so they call the police. But now Rufus is stuck as a dog and can't become Jace Norman ever again. That's so sad. But before he can get arrested, the evil British guy gets away, and then it's revealed that he's working for an evil squirrel. Throughout the movie, there's a bit about Rufus saying that squirrels are evil because, you know, dogs hate squirrels, and he's like, yeah, like they have evil intentions. But it turns out that the squirrels are actually evil because there's a squirrel corporation going on, I guess. And then they keep the cracked amulet that they have on Rufus's collar, so it's like always a part of him. Manny and Paige are taking him on a walk in the park, and then as they say, oh, maybe he can be a boy one day again, the amulet sparks. I read this 8 magical amulets out of 10 canines. I wonder if they made a sequel. Sadly, they did indeed make a sequel. We open to an evil animal control guy driving around in his truck, trying to kidnap innocent dogs and cats. He's also creepily saying, here doggy doggy / here kitty kitty. I did not enjoy this, and it's a horrible way to open the movie. He also has a whole like tech thing that searches for dogs and cats in the area. I think this man should go to jail because he's creepy, and I do not like the way that he speaks about animals. And then as he's passing by Manny's house, we then enter Manny's house and get an update on what's going on. And also his house is huge. So what do his parents do is my question. Manny and Paige, who are still together, they're starting an online blog that are documenting the stories of Rufus and his like boy adventures. This is because the magical amulet still works, and so Rufus is a boy again. And he can do this interchangeably, like he can decide to morph between dog and human, but it's really controlled by his emotions. And so if he gets really excited, he turns into a dog, or like really nervous or embarrassed. Most of the time he's boy Rufus. Also, Manny admits to his parents that their dog can literally morph into a boy because of a magical amulet, and then they're surprisingly chill with it. And then they're going to school like normal, and then Rufus is really sad because he wants a girlfriend, because Manny has a girlfriend and Rufus has really bad luck with girls because he always acts like a dog. This makes it so that he cannot form a connection, because every time they try and talk about something like serious, he chases after a squirrel, you know? And there's a random camera at school that's like stalking them or whatever, and it is revealed that the evil squirrel from the end of the last movie is actually stalking them and looking for the magical amulet. And then he says that Rufus is no match for his next agent that he's going to send in to get the amulet. Back at the school, Chloe from Henry Danger walks in and she's serving. And when random boy tries to talk to her because, you know, she's pretty, she hisses at him. Very similar to the random girls who used to act like cats in my elementary school. So everyone's freeze around here and it's normal, I guess. And also when she hisses, her eyes turn into cat eyes. That boy is probably traumatized forever. Oh my god, that would be so freaky. She goes up to Rufus of all people and like singles him out and then introduces herself, and her name is Cat. Gee guys, I wonder if she's a cat. And then Rufus is so like down bad for her like immediately and so nervous, and so he literally admits that he's a dog like right then and there. And then Paige and Manny cover it up for him because he's like literally admitting his whole life story to her. And then she asks him out on a date and he says yes, of course, because she's a diva. And then when she goes outside of the cafeteria, she answers her phone and says that she made contact with the target. So she has evil intentions, I guess. And then she pulls out her own amulet that she has, the same as Rufus's, and turns into a black cat. So now we have a little play on words, you know, like black cat, golden retriever relationship. That's what we got going on, except golden lab. And then Manny and Paige are trying to coach Rufus on how to be like a good date and not like act like a dog on the date, you know? And then Jace Norman delivers the best line I've ever heard in my life.
She's gonna guess I'm a dog for sure.
And because Rufus is so nervous, they decide to make it a double date instead, so then he like has someone to bounce off of that's not just himself, you know? And then they end up passing by a yarn shop on the way, and so Cat gets really excited because, you know, cats like yarn. Her and Rufus end up bonding, and the fact that they both do animal-like things in the yarn shop, and they're having a lot of fun. And then Paige and Manny are really confused. And then for the actual date, they go to a seafood restaurant, which Cat is really excited about because cats like seafood. And then we get a shot of the evil squirrel guy saying that the plan is moving to the next phase. Also, he's talking to his assistant, who's really small right here. And then Kat leaves for a moment to take a phone call. She ends up turning into a cat and then eating a rat on the street. Rufus gets nervous inside the restaurant and turns into a dog, and so they get kicked out for having a dog in the restaurant. I guess no one saw him turn into a dog. It would have been kind of concerning. And then when they get back out, Kat turns back into a human and they don't suspect her at all. I think she literally had a rat tail hanging out of her mouth. That is disgusting. But then she almost gets hit by a mail truck because she's playing with bubbles, and Rufus saves her life. And they bond over this near-death experience, aka she's like, oh my god, literally saved my life. Like, he's kind of the ideal man. And then Kat purrs on his shoulder after this. That's freaky. Paige and Manny aren't even concerned. They're like, oh my god, like they're getting along. That's so great. Save your freaking friend. He's literally with a freakzoid. Oh my god. Paige and Manny end up seeing that she has a magical amulet. They're like, oh my god, she's also a freaking animal. And then we get the lore drop of the evil squirrel guy and his like evil plan or whatever. He wants the amulet to make himself a human, so then he can also use the magic of the amulet to make his acorn butter irresistible so everyone will buy it. He wants to buy into capitalism, basically. He wants to make a bunch of factories and make himself rich. Rufus and Kat chase each other through the school in dog and cat form, but they don't know it's each other because they don't know that they're a dog and a cat. Kat does know that Rufus is a dog, so that's a lie. But he doesn't know that she's a cat. This is because she's trying to steal the amulet that he has. But Paige and Manny overhear this, and so they're trying to tell Rufus that she's evil, but he doesn't believe them because that's the only girl he's ever liked. And to prove it, they trap Kat in order to show Rufus that there's a black cat running around, and a second amulet, and he still doesn't believe them. And then Rufus goes out to mope because he's like, oh my god, my friends don't support my new girlfriend or whatever. And he ends up getting targeted by the animal control guy because his like scanner picks up dog, and so I think he gets kidnapped. And then while this is happening, Kat explains to Manny and Paige that she's actually a good guy and she just wants the amulet because the black cats are the keeper of the amulets or whatever. She wants to keep the amulet away from the squirrel guy. And in reality, the animal control guy is the catcher for the squirrel guy. And the amulets are like from dragons or something, and so they were like passed down to the cats through evolution. I don't know. But then one got lost and was used for like evil, and that's the one that Rufus has. They end up following Rufus because they figure out that he got kidnapped by the animal control guy. And they go to an acorn factory, aka where the squirrel guy is. He takes Rufus's amulet and gives it to the squirrel, and so the squirrel is now a human, and this is what he looks like. And then he ends up throwing the animal control guy into the production line of like the acorn butter and turning him into acorn butter. That's so Willy Wonka. And they're about to send Rufus in dog form through the production line, but then Kat ends up showing up and saving him with her nails because they're like claws, even in human form. So she like cuts the ropes that he's in, and so we can get out. While she's doing that, Manny and Paige go to get the amulet back from the squirrel. And they're doing this by like tripping the assistant guy and the squirrel guy to get the amulet back and give it back to Rufus. But once Rufus turns back into a boy, the assistant guy kidnaps Kat and then takes her amulet and like holds her up in cat form and threatens to drop her into the acorn butter, aka turn her into acorn butter and drown her if Rufus doesn't give up his amulet. He's gonna give up the amulet, but then he does like a fake out and then dumps the assistant guy into the acorn butter and saves Kat. Him and Kat bond over another near-death experience. Kat's mom shows up, aka like the leader of the black cats or whatever, and then says like, oh, good job, you got the amulet. Steals it from Rufus, and so he's back in dog form. But then Kat convinces her mom to let him keep it because he like saved her life or whatever, and also he's like a good guy and won't use it for evil. She allows this with the caveat that Kat has to watch over it, so like Kat just has to hang out with Rufus basically to make sure that he's not doing anything crazy with the amulet. And she also kisses him on the cheek. And then the movie ends with them all going to the pet store, including Manny and Paige, because they're basically like chaperones to those two. The evil squirrel runs on a power line because he escaped, but he's still in squirrel form. Also, in squirrel form, he can talk. Does that mean that all animals can talk, or is it just squirrels? Overall, this movie was definitely more ridiculous than the first one. So because of that, I rated 6 magical amulets out of 10 black cats. Blurt was also a Nickelodeon original movie. We are introduced to our main character, played by Jace Norman, of course, whose name is Jeremy, and he's driving with his sister, Jojo Siwa. She has a name in this movie. Do I know what it is? No. And so her name will be Jojo Siwa. Jojo says that he needs to stop being people pleaser because people are using him like a doormat, aka he's too nice to people and he needs to stand up for himself. And we also hear his inner monologue, and to say the least, he is a thinker. He never stops thinking. And eventually he goes to school and we follow him, of course, in his mind. And so he's talking in his thoughts about how he's in love with the most popular girl at school, and her name is Corinne. But of course, he's too nervous and shy to talk to her because he is a loser and it's not popular. And then as he's doing his inner monologue in class about talking about how his ass itches or something like that, his teacher calls on him, and so he gets nervous and says, "Scratch my butt" out loud. I personally would never go back to school after that, and I don't want to be in this character's head anymore. And then everyone in the class laughs. Everyone thinks he's a weirdo because, you know, he said "scratch my butt" out loud in the middle of class. And then his teacher recommends that he should run for class president because he apparently has so much to say. She's honestly preying upon his downfall, and I kind of love. And then in the hallway, Jeremy runs into the jock of the school and also the the shoe-in for class president because he's like the most popular guy in school, and his name is Richie Capri. They start chatting because Richie wants something from him, but as they're talking, Jeremy's like literally in love with him. He's so engrossed in him that he like agrees to write his history paper for him, only for the fact that Richie Capri is talking to him. Like he like actually gets manipulated right then and there. And then he goes to the mall with JoJo to get her an accessory, and while he's like waiting outside, he sees a VR set that he can test out for free for 5 minutes. And basically the way that it works is that it'll take anything you're thinking about and like bring it into the VR. And so he dances with what he thinks is Corinne, but it's actually a mannequin, and because he like makes it up in his brain. And he's running around the mall dancing with a mannequin, so everyone thinks he's like a freakazoid. And he then falls into a fountain. The salesperson comes back and he's like, whoa, like 5 free minutes. I did not ask you to be in the fountain. Don't get the machinery wet, bro. But since he still has the VR set on, he sees like someone coming towards him in the water and thinks he's a sea monster, because of course he does. He's a thinker at heart. And he ends up getting the headset wet, and because of this it short circuits and electrocutes his neck. I'm sure that won't have any negative consequences towards him. And then he wakes up the next morning and is speaking all of his thoughts out loud. After being in the inner monologue of this man, this can pose no good for his life. And then he goes to the bathroom and tries to get literally talking to himself in the mirror. He's trying to stop his inside voice from speaking out loud, and his family overhears this, and I'm surprised that they don't send him to a mental hospital right then and there, because that's so concerning. And then he goes to school like normal, but he does the same thing of having like full mental monologues in his head, but now they're just out loud. He actually ends up talking to Corinne. I think he's just like in the hallway, and it's really embarrassing because he like says everything he thinks out loud, and he probably says something about liking her. I don't know. But then him and JoJo go back to the mall because they're trying to figure out why he's speaking all of his thoughts out loud. And then the salesperson who was doing the VR headsets says to control him speaking his thoughts out loud by doing something that would fill his desire of wanting to be heard, because he's like, you're only speaking out loud because your brain is thinking it. Huh? Doesn't really make sense. I don't really care. And so he thinks like, oh yeah, like I have to speak up for myself more. And so he decides to run for class president, like his teacher said. He is at first hesitant about, running for class president because he doesn't want to like stand up in front of people and like talk or whatever. But he is convinced after he talks to Richie again. And then Richie's like, oh yeah, like that history report coming. And then Jeremy's like, no, like I'm not going to be a doormat. And so he says, yeah, I will run for class president, and no, I'm not doing your history report. And then because he's like speaking weird things out loud all the time, he takes it upon himself to tape his mouth shut, and so he won't say all his thoughts all the time. And people take it as like a trendy thing because they're like, oh my god, he's so cool, like he is protesting something by taping his mouth shut. And so other people start doing it too, and that's like his fan base. And then this other girl down here, she also runs for class president, and she is just like very much like just wants to help the school, very kind-hearted, and her name is Millie. And she is played by the girl from Night Squad, and she's really pretty. And eventually Jeremy loses the whole tape over the mouth bit because he like actually needs to talk to people to get votes. And so he's campaigning in different clubs and trying to like solve their problems. And then he actually gains popularity because people take the message of him like being a loser, of like giving people without a voice, I guess. I don't know. And then Corinne goes to talk to him like at his locker, and he gets really nervous, and then like he says out loud something about asking her out, and then she says yes, which is crazy. But this is only because she wants to use him from his new popularity of like running for class president, like being a really good candidate, in order to get her way when he inevitably wins class president, because he's like the top candidate. And they go to a date like at a restaurant, and it's the same night as JoJo's dance recital, and that he's like supposed to go to. And so he kind of has like an hour for the date, and then he has to leave. But Corin is not for that at the date as well. They're like chatting or whatever about, because she wants like a whole page in the yearbook or something like that. And then Millie comes up to them and is like talking to Jeremy about like different issues in the school, because she's also running, and they like share ideas on how to fix different problems with like the chess club or like the dance club or something like that. And Corinne is really mean to Millie because she's not popular, and so Jeremy's like, I don't know about that. And so he kind of gets mad at her, but he has to leave the date obviously because of JoJo's dance recital, and he's still late even though he leaves his date. But the problem is that obviously he can't control what's coming out of his mouth because like he's speaking his thoughts out loud. At the same time, turn off your thoughts for a little bit, bro, because he walks into that dance recital yapping his little ass off, and like loudly. He can whisper. It's not unheard of. And like the thing is, he's being so disruptive to the point where JoJo messes up her freaking dance, and she's dancing to a JoJo Siwa song, which I find really funny.
Oh, Jack, get over it. It's me, Jeremy. I'm late. I'm coming to you guys. You're great. Okay, right. Guys, everybody be quiet. I love you, sis. Go blow it.
Like, I would have kicked him out. This is crazy. And like, this recital was really important to her, so like he's honestly public enemy number one. Like, and then he does apologize for doing this, and he's like, yeah, like sorry that I'm speaking my thoughts out loud or whatever, like sorry for ruining your dance recital. And then she's kind of still mad at him because like he was so loud for no reason. Like he was yelling at the top of his lungs. Anyway, there's a final debate for president at school, and Corinne is the moderator, and she plans to cheat to basically give Jeremy like the upper hand on every single question. And she's using the same problems that they've been talking about with the different clubs or whatever, and specifically asking Jeremy first. And so then he's basically forced to say Millie's answer because that's what he's thinking of. But like they were completely her ideas from when they talked about it at like the restaurant or whatever. And so he feels really bad because he's like, I don't want to say these answers, but Corinne's like basically setting it up for me to have the good answers. And so every single time that he answers, Millie doesn't have an answer because he stole hers. So it's making her look bad. But then eventually he just cracks and gives a speech about how like all of his answers were Millie's answers and how she's the right candidate and she should win. And then everyone claps and they're like, oh my God, yes, Millie's the best candidate. And also no one cares about Richie anymore because he's just like boring and doesn't really know what's going on, and he's not really popular anymore. And then after the debate, Jeremy has his own inside thoughts again. They're not coming out of his mouth, which is great. So I guess all he had to do was stand up for someone else, because he wasn't even standing up for himself. I'm really confused, but it just went away. And as he's leaving the debate, he realizes that he's actually in love with Millie and not Corinne anymore because Corinne's a bitch. I love that for him, I guess. And he has like a whole celebration about having his inner thoughts again right in front of Millie. And then as he leaves, Millie turns to Jojo and says that he's cute, which I would not. I would run. He's a freaking freak. Oh my God. Also, him and Jojo are on good terms again since he did the right thing. And then we actually never see who wins the election because the movie just kind of ends. But I assume Millie won because she was the only one that people liked. And then we do see Jeremy standing up to Corinne and saying that like she's actually like really mean and that she shouldn't be doing that. And then she actually like finds him hot in this moment. She like afterwards she's like, oh my God, like he was kind of cute. So all it took was him being mean to her, I guess. I don't know. Jeremy and Millie don't technically end up together, but they have loose crushes on each other. So I guess there's that. I hate this movie, if you couldn't tell by the fact that I don't want to talk about it at all. When I watched this, I was physically in pain. Like I wanted to turn it off so many times, but I didn't because the things I do for YouTube. But yeah, I hate this movie and everything about it, and I wish it was never made. For one, there's no conclusion. Like he likes someone else and then he randomly liked her at the end. Doesn't really make sense. I didn't like his character. I thought he was quite annoying in the fact that he talked all the time. And I get that that's what the struggle was, is he had so many internal thoughts that he was saying out loud, but I needed him to stop talking and stop thinking, please. And so for those reasons, I rated this movie 1 VR headset out of 10 Jojobos. This one sadly has like a lot of lore, so strap in, guys. We start the movie to Jace Norman wearing definition of a fuck ass outfit. He's running around a car dealership and then like testing out a sports car, so he seems like rich, you know?
Mr. Styles. Harold Styles.
And then he voices over like his whole life story, aka his name is Xander DeWitt, and he's investigating a manager of the car dealership and like sneaking around because he's looking for a license plate. This is because he is a high school detective that's searching for his father who went missing. He searches for his dad's license plate's location and hacks into the database at least a little bit so then he can transfer the data back when he gets home. But he gets caught by the police and gets taken home to his mother. As he's sitting in his room, he lore dropped through his voiceover that his dad was an engineer, which is so me core when I was a kid and I wanted to work as a Disney Imagineer and get no pay. Basically what happened to his dad is that one day he just basically went missing. Like he went to his job and went missing. And then Xander has been looking for him ever since because his grandfather used to be a private investigator. And so he's like, I actually have the detective genes in me. Anyway, he takes the database from the car dealership and like plugs it into his own computer and finds his dad's license plate and the location. And then his mom walks in his room and basically is like, oh yeah, like, you're spent today with the police, unacceptable. And you've also been skipping school a lot. So I'm going to send you to live with your grandpa in Bixler Valley. And so he's going to Bixler High. Title drop. And he only agrees to this because the GPS location that he found of his dad's car was in Bixler Valley. And so he's like, yeah, I'll go live with my grandpa for sure. As they drive into Bixler Valley, Xander does his voiceover of like what's in the town or whatever. And it's very hick. I'll just give it that. And Xander wants to talk to his grandpa because he's like, oh, he was also a private investigator. Like, let me pick his brain about investigating stuff. And maybe he can help me look for my dad because it was his son. But his grandpa is like very serious and like kind of a no bullshit kind of guy. And he also has a prosthetic leg. So go him. And when Xander brings up investigating his dad's disappearance, his grandfather says no, that he will not help him and that also he shouldn't be doing it at all. Xander doesn't really listen to this, but just kind of like puts a pin in it for later. Then he goes to school for the first day and he meets baby Ariel, whose name is Kenzie, and she is a nerd. He sits in her seat in like their science class because he's new and so he doesn't know like the seats or whatever, and she yells at him for sitting in her assigned seat. He then makes fun of her for being smart, which literally makes no sense because like he only wanted the front seat in the room because he likes science and so he wanted to like be the nerd in the class and answer the questions. So who is he to make fun of her for being smart? And she's also an investigator for the school newspaper. And so she like writes all the stories. She's a writer, investigator. She has all the jobs. She's honestly a girl boss in every single way. And he is just a hater. And then later that night, Xander tries to sneak out in order to do some investigations on where the car location was. And his grandma catches him. They're like chatting or whatever. And Xander finally gets the information out of him on when the last time his dad was there, because obviously the GPS location was in Bixler Valley, meaning that he probably went to go see his dad. That would make sense. His grandpa says that the last time he was there was Christmas, which was like way before he went missing. And so Xander's like, oh, So when the YMCA in Bixler Valley. And because of this, Xander shows him like the GPS thing. He's like, yeah, this is the last place that his car was. Like, what's this about? And all that he gives him is that it's the address of the old library. He doesn't want to be involved in the investigating. He's like, I can't really stop you if you sneak out past the time I go to bed, you know? So that night he goes out like like 11 p.m. or whatever, and gets caught by the police immediately because he's trying to trespass on the old library that's now abandoned. But he also meets the guy who now owns the library, and he finds out that it's his like dad's old friend from when they were kids, because his dad grew up in Bixler Valley, and it is this guy whose name is Jack. And like outside the library, like at the fence thing, Xander finds a postcard that his dad used to write to him like whenever he like traveled or something. And so he's like, oh my god, like my dad was right here. The thing is, he's been missing for like I think like 2 months or something like that. And so that postcard stayed there for 2 months. I call bullshit. Oh my god. Also, he gets out of the run-in with the police because of Jack. Like Jack's like, oh, he's chill, he's just kid or whatever. So shout out to him, I guess, for getting him away from a second police encounter in like a week. And then on this postcard that he finds is the address for the old diner that's also abandoned because both the library and the diner collapsed like randomly. And so it's kind of like a thing that's going around Bixler Valley. Random buildings are collapsing. And while he's looking for this diner at like night, he actually runs into Kenzie because she's doing undercover work to like figure out this case or something. And it's a case about like stolen fireworks or something like that. And then Xander cracks it like this. And he's like, okay, that was so easy because he's investigating all the time, I guess. They make a deal that if he like solved the case or whatever, then he gets her seat in science class. He does indeed win that. And so he gets to sit in the front seat now. And basically the way that he figures it out is that they're trying to figure out a code to get inside this warehouse that has fireworks. And so it's like figuring out how the kids broke in to steal the fireworks. And it's because he uses a UV light to see where the fingerprints are on the electric pad. And then she also proposes teaming up. So then she can help him with all like the town stuff that he's looking for because she's lived there, and then he can help her with all of her unfinished cases like throughout the town for the newspaper. And he does this really easily because it's just like school level mysteries. It's not like really hard, but he is really rude to this little girl who's wondering about her missing dog. She like asks Kenzie, she's like, hey, like I know you do cases or whatever, you want to look into my dog who's missing. Xander's like really dismissive of her and really mean, even when he's wearing like a fuck ass outfit. And then they're out investigating like the town. Like Kenzie said, she would have him look for stuff or whatever. He's like a Vespa-esque scooter kind of thing. His brakes aren't working while they're investigating, and so they almost get hit by a train. And then eventually Kenzie leads him toward a swamp so they can crash into it. And then they go back to his grandpa's house, and then Xander lore dumps to her about like how his dad is missing and everything. And he's like, yeah, maybe we shouldn't work together because like this is kind of like way bigger. Like my brakes got cut today because like that wasn't just like freak accident. Like that was definitely like targeted. But she denies us. She's like, no, I still want to help you because they kind of formed a connection through this whole scooter incident. And so she is still along for the ride and very much helping him track his dad's disappearance. And they're less worried about school cases now, and they really don't care about that. And now they're just centered on the mystery of his dad's disappearance. And Xander also has an epiphany that his dad's car would have gotten towed if it was sitting there for like 2 months. And so he's like, oh, let's go to the tow place and figure out what was in his car. And Xander goes undercover as a guy who's like delivering fast food or something. And so he's like distracting the guy who's watching the cameras while Kenzie sneaks into the place and gets to his dad's car. And as she's looking around the cars, she like finally gets whatever was inside of it, but all the car alarms go off. And so Xander has to distract the other guy by like being really annoying and like really pushy about the food. They end up getting out scot-free, except for the fact that the guy realizes that someone was at the tow yard, but they don't know who it is, and so it's fine. Inside of the car was a notebook, and so they're like, maybe it has a hint or whatever, but then it's a blank notebook. But then Xander uses his detective brain and figures out that like whatever he wrote on the top page in the notebook can still be seen because of the pencil marks, and so he like does a light shading to see the outline of what he said, and it's an address, random address, in the word crater in all caps. And also at this point, Xander and Kenzie kind of have some like awkward tension because they kind of like each other now. And then Xander goes to his grandpa with this information because he's like, I think I actually have something towards where my dad is. And then his grandpa says that he should just give it to the police instead and not investigate it. And then Xander asks like why he isn't helping, and like because he used to be a private investigator. His grandpa says that he had to stop because he promised his dead wife that he wouldn't be a private investigator anymore, because that's how he lost his leg, was he fell off of a roof, which is crazy. Also, my sister watched like maybe 5 minutes of this movie, and the grandpa is there in the first 5 minutes, and all she had to say was that the grandpa couldn't act. And so when he's explaining the story of like, you know, I lost my leg falling off a roof or whatever, I'm like, okay, because he can't act for shit. But what he does do is give Xander a old VHS that says the word crater, because he's like, I never knew what this is, but this is like an old thing from your dad's childhood. And it's basically his dad's old science project, and it could imitate earthquakes. And so Xander's like, what the hell? Like, what does this have to do with anything? Also, this is like imitating concentrated earthquakes. It's not like an overall thing. It's like in a certain spot, which is crazy technology for the 80s. But while he's testing the device in the VHS recording, it causes the water tower to collapse. And because of this, Xander connects it to the collapsing buildings happening throughout the town, like every few years. And so he creates a whole like conspiracy about how someone is restarting Crater like the device and purposely collapsing different buildings in the town. And obviously he comes to this epiphany by himself in his home. And so the next day he explains it to Kenzie and she's like, oh my God, you're crazy. Like you're actually crazy. This isn't real. And then Xander also connects it to the lost dogs because he's like, dogs can predict when an earthquake's about to come, like they can feel it. And so that's why there's all the missing dogs in the town. And so when the girl with the lost dog comes back, she's like, no, that's some bullshit. Like you're actually so stupid. And then he gets a text from his dad that Crater is real and to meet him at the clock tower. And so he's like, oh my God, like my father is here and he is indeed not missing anymore. Let me go meet him. He asked to meet at the clock tower at 2 a.m. Creepy. So he brings Kenzie along with him because why not? Even though she was like, yeah, you're crazy. Like that's definitely not real. He then breaks into her house, breaks and enter into her bedroom, and then wakes her up at 2 a.m. Freaky. Also, the message said to come alone, but he brings Kenzie anyway. And then instead of his father at the clock tower, it is indeed the guy from the library because he is a supervillain. He's the one restarting Crater. Basically, he kidnapped Xander's dad to restart the Crater project because he doesn't really know how to work it like Xander's dad does. And so he's keeping him in order to run the device and collapse different buildings so we can buy out the abandoned buildings and make a bunch of money with new buildings that he built. So basically capitalism. This is because the town basically uses his company to rebuild the things that get collapsed. And so his company gets paid in order to build these new buildings. And then the next thing that he's going to collapse is the clock tower that they're currently in. And then he locks Xander and Kenzie inside the clock tower when it's supposed to collapse the next morning. So he's basically trying to kill them. And a common theme that Xander and his grandpa have is like, if you're ever in trouble, send an SOS signal. And so Xander has an idea of sending an SOS through the clock by basically moving the hands to 5:05 because it looks like SOS. And this is because the clock tower hasn't moved in like actual like decades. And so his grandpa will notice if it's a different time than it usually is. And as he sends the SOS, which is so Jonas Brothers coded, his grandpa sees the 5:05 and he's like, oh yes, like this is from Xander, this is an SOS. He can't drive because of his prosthetic leg. And so he takes the girl with the lost dog because she just shows up at Xander's house. So she drives him to the clock tower when she's like maybe 12. And they managed to get Xander and Kenzie out, but this is like the next morning. So they were in there for the entire night. They do bond during the night that they spend in the clock tower. And they like each other for real now. But his grandpa manages to get them both out. So they're not going to collapse in the freaking clock tower. But then the earthquake starts, like they can feel it. And they're like, okay, we got to find Crater fast before it like collapses the rest of the town. And then Xander uses his detective brain and thinks that when they use Crater, it has to be like lower to the ground. And so he realizes that they're using it in the abandoned mine shaft.
As a child, I yearned for the mines.
And then they split up into teams. Xander and his grandpa go to confront the mineshaft business. Meanwhile, Kenzie and the lost dog girl go to warn the town to like prepare for a big earthquake or whatever. And once Xander and his grandpa get to the mineshaft, they see Xander's father literally ankle monitored to his like lab station that he's in. Jack literally kidnapped him, which is crazy work. Jack comes back and gives another evil monologue about like he's gonna like destroy the town and get so much money or whatever. They're kind of trapped inside this room because the like security door closed. Xander's grandpa has a real one, aka he uses his prosthetic leg to prop open the door so they could get out. And then he also knocks out the evil guy. And at this point, the Crater device has already started, so the like earthquake started going through town, but they're trying to decode it in order for the whole earthquake not to happen. And they're trying to like guess the code because it's like 4 digits or whatever. And it ends up being 1, 2, 3, 4, just because they're trying not to use like the obvious one, but then it ends up being 1, 2, 3, 4. And then when Crater's deactivated, his dad's ankle monitor also gets deactivated, and so he's like able to leave and see the light for the first time in like 2 months. And then the evil guy gets arrested for literally kidnapping a man for 2 months and also trying to plot against town. And they all have a party to celebrate that his dad is back home and that they also saved the town. And Xander decides to finish his high school year in Bixler High, and at the party, him and Kenzie kiss because they're kind of in love. And like the last scene is because like obviously the whole thing is voiceover, and so he's like, yeah, like that's where it ended. A guy's private life doesn't have to be like all the way shown, and then it shows the kiss. So does that mean that he like knew what he was showing us?
That's a wrap. So thanks for watching. Okay, I know what you're waiting for, but partners don't kiss. All right, that's not gonna happen. There's nothing to see here. It's the end. Can a guy get some privacy here? Okay, just cut to black.
I rate this movie 5 scooters out of 10 fuck-ass outfits. And last but not least, we have Henry Danger the movie. It's also included in my Henry Danger video, so if you don't watch that before, you can go watch that now, because I also explained the plot to that wonderful movie. I enjoyed it, so I rated it 8 taco towers out of 10 Canadians. If you don't understand those references, then go watch my video. And this is the comprehensive list of everything that we talked about today. Jace Norman has been through many lives throughout these movies, of course. I say his worst character is probably Blurt. I can never watch that movie again. I think I'll actually like rip my hair out. I don't love his character in Big Sorry Brevity. Like he's actually an asshole to everyone, and I can't have him being an asshole to Baby Ariel. That's really rude. I would say my favorite rendition of him would probably be Henry Hart, but that's like a shoe-in. But I also really like Flunky from the Thundermans, like, because his name is Flunky. That's so stupid. I don't love it. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please subscribe to see my other stuff, because I have some really fun videos planned up. I have a lot written, so I'm really excited for those. Please leave a comment about other things you would like me to talk about. I'm open to suggestions. And thank you so much for the love on the Henry Danger video as of recently. This has been a wild ride. It's currently like 2:30 a.m. I feel like my brain is like going to mush. I can't wait for when I wake up in the morning and like literally probably tweak out. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.